Which state is your organization? Would you say you're top of the game, you're somewhere mid-tier, or you're not? And the important point here is that it's not about opinions. It is about science. The state of organizations is the new study which was just published by McKinsey. When you say now, oh, come on, McKinsey, really? So wait, we all know last week wasn't great for McKinsey. The AI chat, the AI bot that got hacked, that was not their best moment. However, when we see a study where you can say more than 10,000 people were interviewed, that is representative. And we have to look into scientific evidence. When we see there is a scientific study which is valid and reliable, we have to talk about that. So, hello to today's episode, and we need to talk about State of Organizations Research 2026. And besides that, I really don't like the bashing of big brands in consultancy. They might have their ups and downs, but let's face it, there are some brilliant people working there. And I can tell you from my experience, many brilliant moments I had with them. Some of them not so great, however, some of them were truly amazing. So, the State of Organizations Research 2026. What are we going to talk about? Very important is I'm going to show you the result of a real world study here. So, the disclaimer. I can use it under Fair Dealing Act, Fair Use Act, and Zitierrecht quotation rights in Germany. So very important is the state of organization. You can download the whole study, by the way, by McKinsey, so feel free to do so. I'm just quoting here. Of course, when you now say, what is it that organizations at the moment, let's say, drive, or what are the worries and the fears of the people, where the development's going? And of course, the first aspect here needs to be, and that goes without saying, of course, AI. When we talk about AI, many organizations are dealing with AI. Some even have policies where they say AI everywhere. The question is, how do you enable people to deal with AI? When you simply say, here is AI, hear the news, this is not how anything is going to work. Because then you have one group, they are totally fascinated about it, they're going to use it. The other group is going to be very scared, frightened about it. Probably people who do not use technology much in their private lives or who are simply not interested in it and say, is my job gone by next week? And then suddenly you have a group that goes against AI. So the number one needs to be enablement. But when you are within the European Union, the EU AI Act already tells you that you need to qualify people in one way or the other. It's a rather very vague statement how to qualify them. So you see that some organizations deliver training sessions of whole day or even 2 days. Some organizations rather go for the 1 hour online class, which is not as efficient as you think it is. At least not when it's not done by a professionally qualified person. So very important is the processes that you have here need to be in place because the enablement alone is not going to make the cut. When you say, hey, we need to put people into seminars, workshops, or put a coach in there, great, but what are the processes around that? When you simply say, here's AI, we train you on it, the result will be, and that happened in organizations where people simply said, look, I got this Copilot training, but I really prefer ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. And then they start to go on the internet browser they have in your office, and then they use their own subscription, most likely violating GDPR rules in your country, especially when you are in Europe, almost guaranteed when you are in Germany. So the process around that needs to be carefully designed. You cannot simply say, here's AI and good luck with that. So be sure that you have proper process in place where you say, hey, maybe we start with write that email for me, or check that proposal, or give us input on that kind of session for the project management team. You need to have a process where you can simply say, this is how we're going to implement it in this organization. Because as soon as people don't know how to collaborate, people will most likely not collaborate on anything except what they think is important. And then you have Department A doing something, Department B doing something. And when you're unlucky, you have 3, 4 different departments and they all do the same in different ways. So you suddenly have 4 versions of the same thing and then they pass it amongst each other and anyone just redoes the whole thing with AI, making it worse and worse and worse, not better and better and better. Change and leadership are interconnected here. And I can tell you because just on Saturday, and that's why I'm in a good mood, just on Saturday, I filed my Master of Science thesis for the management and management for sorry for the Master of Science and Management Research, which I'm doing right now, which I now have finished. Let's wait for the marks, and I did lots of interviews. Thank you very much for the support of the people who were part of that study. Very important here is as soon as leadership fails during change, the change fails as well. And there's a quite complex set of tools you need to have today to make change work. And simply telling people, here is the new piece of software called ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Copilot is not what collaboration is going to be. You need way more than that. Of course, you need champions or leaders within departments, but that do not necessarily have to be the department leaders who probably have a very different specialization. Just because you are the department lead doesn't mean that you maybe have someone within your team who's way more knowledgeable on AI than you are. So that is the leader on AI in your department. And there is nothing wrong with that. So be sure that the collaboration is actively enhanced, actively ignited in your organization. Because the next aspect, especially when AI goes around and people think, I'm not sure where this is going, I'm not sure about my job, I'm not sure about the future, I'm not sure about anything. And that's exactly the next aspect. People have to deal with a lot of uncertainty at the moment. And the first uncertainty is economic uncertainty. And let me tell you one aspect, because as someone who lives in Zurich and London, I can tell you that at the moment we have way too much of that talk where people say, yeah, petrol is becoming more expensive. That was foreseeable, wasn't it? So why not take public transport? Hmm, let me think, because when someone lives in a rural local village somewhere and you live in London, you probably have no clue about their situation. That's why. I come from a small village in northern Germany, Barmstedt in the district of Pinneberg, which you probably have never heard about. Feel free to look it up, Barmsted. That is the city's name, Barmstedt in northern Germany. Small village. Today, roughly 10,000 people live there. When I grew up, basically half of that lived there. And the bus that goes in this village, even today, I mean, they now have a train line, and their train line goes roughly once per hour during the weekend, bit more often during the week to transport people back and forth. Hardly any trains after 11 p.m. midnight, hardly anything before 5 a.m. So there are huge gaps. There's no night service, and the bus within the city is usually only there for school children. So you roughly have 4 buses a day. If you want to connect to the other cities, suburbs, and villages around that, you sometimes only have 2 buses a day. And you're sitting there telling them, oh, yeah, simply go by public transport. Economic uncertainties, of course, when you are a highly skilled engineer and you do your second master's degree, you're probably making 6 digit anyway. So £50, $50 at the petrol station is not going to harm you significantly. Of course, you're angry about that, and many people are. However, it's not going to change your life significantly. When you work via a job agency in temp work and you are lent to someone on a temporary contract and you basically work on minimum wage, so does your partner, and you try to make ends meet with children, family, rent, and whatnot else somewhere in a rural area, and you say £50 more or less is the difference between being able to pay the bills, just about, and not being able to pay the bills. So, as employers, we need to take care that people can make ends meet. And I know how frustrating this is when you say everything becomes more and more expensive. Why is this my job? Well, because if you don't do that, people will simply say, look, this is so stressful. I'd rather call in sick, not go to work, and live off benefits. Because then my rent is paid, electricity is paid. Of course, I'm a bit poorer probably, but I have no stress. I get up at 11 a.m. in the morning, watch TV, don't do much. I don't have to struggle because that money, at least, comes in every month. When you're sitting somewhere on a 0 hour contract, you do not even know at the end of the month if you had enough hours together to make ends meet. And beginning of next month, you have no idea if you make any money at all. Which is why, by the way, the Association of Employers in Germany spoke up against 0 hour contracts. And we're not going to discuss the pros and cons of 0 hour contracts here. However, economic risk, and especially entrepreneurial risk, is based on you take a share of the risk. Or you get external suppliers in, pay a bit more, and they do it for you. Another part of entrepreneurial risk, hiring self-employed people for your business. You need to be aware that economic circumstances are an incredibly important part, and they're becoming more crucially important minute by minute, hour by hour. On top of that, we have the geopolitical aspect of that. And the geopolitical aspect is something where you simply cannot sit there and say, I have no position on the matter. When you say, in countries where especially marginalized communities say, I don't know how people are going to deal with me or if they chase me through the street by tomorrow. I don't know if my rights will be taken away. I don't know if democracy is going to be limited or taken away. And you as a leader say, look, we stay politically neutral. That is spineless. Nothing else, nothing short of spineless. It does not mean, and of course you don't have to go to the other end where you say you can only vote for that party, anything else is wrong. But when you have leaders in your team who openly say, and we had that in Germany in projects where I worked, and someone said he openly votes for a far right-wing extremist parties, for a far right-wing extremist party, because he wants to get and then a certain group out of the country, and then got even worse from there. It was a very good act that the CEO of that company said that leader is taken out of their job the same day. Because as soon as someone says, I deny someone equal and human rights, or people say, oh no, we're neutral on that, you're neutral on human rights. You're neutral on democracy, and then you wonder why people don't follow you. How very surprising. If you have never learned leadership, you need to learn it. It's a skill that anyone learns. However, geopolitical positioning, what's happening around the world and what's your position on that, is part of the game. And there is never a 100% this or that, right or wrong. However, when we look within the political spectrum and how companies deal with different scenarios, prosperous countries usually are somewhere in the middle ground between left-wing parties and right-wing parties. And I mean something in between Labour, Liberal, Conservative, somewhere there. As soon as you go far left-winged, the economy dips. As soon as you far right, usually you have anything in between dipping economy and civil war. So, and of course, the civil war can also happen on the far left end. No question about that. So, when people stay neutral on these aspects, your people will say, you are not a leader. You are simply opportunistic. You just put your flag in the wind and see where's the direction going. Oh, okay, I just go the wind direction. I just go with the wind direction. The geopolitical positioning in any kind of statement, I am a self-employed entrepreneur, and surprise, surprise, I'm a liberal. Some call me neoliberal, which I disagree with. I'm not libertarian. I am liberal, and that is my position, and I can accept other positions. But when someone says we want to have 75% taxes on income, I will massively disagree with them. When someone says get these kind of people out of the country because I'm a racist and I love it, I will disagree with them. And I will openly do so, which any reasonable human being will do. Any positioning, having a position attracts people to work for you because they feel safe and sound, they know what they sign up for. When you, as just a leader, recently did on my LinkedIn channel, say, oh, I think it's quite okay when a bit more extremist parties get in, mixes things a bit up, stirs a bit of a pot, makes people feel how things can go. That, of course, and of course, it escalated negatively for that leader immediately within his own company because people said, we're not going to follow you anywhere anymore because with that position, we just think you're unsuitable for leadership. When you think that people's life could get worse and should get worse, nothing gets better. You only want others to feel worse. This destructive kind of approach, having no position except anything worse for anyone else, that will fire back at you very quickly. So leadership is a crucial part in times of uncertainty. And you often, when you faced uncertainty and you saw that leaders stood up, you might, when some leaders stand their ground and say, look, it's a tough time. We have to cut 15% of all jobs. 15%, every eighth person goes within 4 weeks' time. People will not applaud that probably, but probably the people who stay said, at least he saved the company for 85% of the people, better than the whole business going down. That is leadership. And it's a skill that you have to learn. Because if you don't, then you're never going to meet the third aspect. And the third aspect now is what are the newest and the most up-to-date workforce expectations? And when you now think, come on, we just talked about economic uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, and now you come with expectations. Yes, I come, not I come with, I do not come along with that. The study comes along with that. And the first aspect is I'm not going to come along with the term purpose here, but with the term meaning. People need to know what is the meaning of what they do. When you know, say it's money, isn't it? Money is part of the game, but not just that. Maybe you had this one moment where you thought, I have the feeling that young people aren't as engaged in work anymore as they were back in the days. So first, that's just a feeling. There's no science to that. There's a different approach to work. There's a different attitude towards working hours. Clearly, we can definitely define that by science. However, there is a context to that. I give you a very simple context. And I know some people have entitlement thinking. Some people think they leave school, they should have their own flat, preferably they own it, and they live in the best area of town in a very central location in a mega metropolis. That, of course, is entitlement thinking, and that cannot happen. At least I don't know any society that could work that way. Still, when you look at, and I just give you my story here as an example, which does not mean you have to do it that way, just as a reflection point. Look back at the time when you were younger. When I was younger, back in the days, not even the euro existed. The euro, we had the predecessor, which was the Deutsche Mark in Germany. And when I went to work as a student, I roughly needed 18 hours of work, 18 hours of work to cover the rent. 18 hours of my work. Let's say I work 40 hours a week, 160 a month, very roughly. We have more than 4 weeks, 4.345 weeks per month. That's a different story. Let's go with 160. So 18 hours out of 160 or a bit more, 18 hours are the rent. When you now look at what people make and you take 18 hours of their work, can they pay the rent? Most likely not. So when people say, look, the deal was when you work really hard, every day, every tomorrow will be a tiny, tiny, tiny bit better than the work today. And you work yourself somewhere and things will get better. And today we have people who say, look, I'm working my off, I'm working everything off that I have, but the inflation rate and everything getting more expensive happens quicker than any kind of salary adaptation I could ever think of. So people think I work, 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 and while work becomes more, 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 my income doesn't even remain stable. It goes down because due to inflation rate and things becoming more expensive, my net income realistically declines while at the same time working more. And that feels, surprise, pointless. Who could have thought? So the very important part here is that when meaning is not there anymore, we as leaders have to step up and tell them this is what we can do for you. You can either pay them more, offer them more bonus hours, offer them bonus for additional work, or you give them flexibility and you say, hey, you can work a bit less so you can have time off, it's less stressful. You have to cover that gap. And I know that you say, isn't that the job of politics? And of course it should be in certain countries or in many countries, if not all. But when politics doesn't cover the gap, you cannot sit there and say, look, not my problem, that's politics' problem. You have to work yourself to death. You have to work very hard, even when it doesn't really make sense. We had generations who did that. And I was part of that generation as well. As a young person at the age of 14, I started to work during every single holiday I had in a factory building. Three-shift system, day and night, whatever I could get to work for my first PC. However, I worked long hours. Some of these jobs were horrible, very, very physically challenging, mentally challenging. I didn't like it. It was very monotonous. Some of them utterly stupid tasks. However, I knew at the end of all that work, I got a personal computer. And that was my reward. So as soon as you have this, because people try to make sense, it's called sense making in science. People try to make sense of what they do. And when they don't find any sense, when they don't see any meaning, when there is no purpose, they will simply say, look, this is pointless. And when it's pointless, I do something else. And that is something which will harm organizations very quickly. When you say we have good or average pay, we have good or average working hours, we offer maybe a couple of benefits, and we offer a decent career, and also we offer an amazing community, social activities, maybe a couple of extras which others do not have. We also offer education, personal development, fully qualified, and we offer you the option to be promoted every other year. Then people will most likely say, hey, I see this is going somewhere. But when you tell people, look, you're here via an external temp agency, just do your job. Shut up, do your job. That's all you have to do. Then please do not be surprised that people are not motivated at work. The workforce expectations today, because we have a shortage of talent and we have a shortage of workforce. The shortage is more demanding than ever, and it will not get better, at least not in most countries within the next 4 to 5 years. Most countries listening, most people from countries listening here today will look at the demographic in their country where they say we're overaged and everything is very problematic. Very few countries say, look, we have a ton of young people here, it's going to be amazing during the next years. Most countries do have demographic problem, do have problem with their demographics. So the meaning and the flexibility is extremely important. And who needs to step up here? Leadership. So we see leadership is a massive part of almost every aspect here. No matter if it's AI with collaboration, if it's having a position on uncertainty economic wise or geopolitical wise, or if it's workforce expectations, meaning, purpose, organizing work and leading people properly and hopefully learning, professionally learning how to work. All of that is leadership. And when you put it in place in the good way, as I just told you, and as science also in the study tells you, then you will have an amazing organization, you will be a very attractive employer, and you will not struggle in the future because you can then say, AI, uncertainty, workforce expectations, we got that. And by the way, we got a job here for you. You want to sign? And most people will say, yes. And I wish you all the best implementing this in your organization. And when you now say, I have a couple of things to discuss here, very happy to discuss that with you. So first, of course, when you're now watching on, let's say, LinkedIn Live, or you watch on YouTube or wherever else, feel free to leave a like here. Thank you very much for doing so. Of course, you can also subscribe to my channel on YouTube or on my podcast channel, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And of course, I'm always happy to see comments. Please leave comments here. I'm looking forward to our discussions here. Of course, when you like to leave a review here, 5 stars, thank you very much for doing that as well. We had a couple of 5-star reviews recently. Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. And of course, recommend this channel to friends, family, anywhere, online and offline, so we grow strong and stable. We are now growing constantly. The rankings are doing very, very well. Thank you very much for tuning in every single week and recommending this to anyone you know. And of course, when you recommend it somewhere on social media, feel free to tag me in it so I can just chip in a bit of a nice comment. Thank you very much for doing so as well. We have additional aspects. We have additional bonuses for you. We offer daily leadership tips for free, including external expertise. We put a lot of effort into this, all of that available completely for free. The YouTube Shorts, just go to YouTube. That, of course, as the name says, is only available on YouTube. The YouTube Shorts, please go there, and then you put the bell in there. So not only subscribe, but put the little bell in there so you don't miss any tips. Usually at the moment, we put a lot of effort into this. There are roughly 1 to 4 leadership tips per day. So we're really looking forward to have an exchange here with you. And of course, you can also follow my podcast. We have the podcast on Apple Podcasts. That's our main channel. Of course, Spotify and any other decent podcast platform. You can also go to my website, nb-networks.biz, or simply drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we just chat via email. Because some people say, hey, I got something, but it's too confidential, can't put it into the comment section. Very happy to do that as well. Looking forward to hearing from you there. And of course, when you say, do we have live sessions? Yes, we have live sessions, and I'm looking forward to our next one, which is quite soon. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, because we only announce our live sessions via the leadership letter, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there. When you sign up, by the way, you only receive 1 email every Wednesday morning, full access to all the articles, podcasts, everything else in 2 languages, English and the English and German language, and in every single email, you see date, time, and the access link for the next live session. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. In addition to that, of course, you can follow me on social media and connect with me on LinkedIn. Proper connecting, not the follow thing. Do a proper connect there. Follow me on Instagram, like me on Facebook, and of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. When you contact me, by the way, you can do that. Maybe you need something very specific where you say, hey, we need a trainer, a coach, a mentor, anyone who can help us with project interim management, a coach, consultant, anything. Very happy to discuss that. When you say, hey, I'd just like to have a chat, very happy to do that as well. I'm answering every single message within 24 hours or less, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you. However, the most important thing always is the last bit that I have to say. Apply what you heard in this podcast and videocast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive aspects that you obviously want to see in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm answering every single message within 24 hours or less. And at the end of this podcast, as well as at the end of the videocast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.